Hi everyone, and welcome back to part 4 of today's lecture series on the art of mystery cults. And in this section, I'm going to be talking about a different mystery cult, this time the cult of Mithras or Mithraism. And this is a sort of a different demographic set yet again for what we've seen so far, where we have the the Dionysiac rituals, which are in the Roman period, sort of in this household context, from the cult of Cybele and Attis, which is more state sanctioned but draws on some of the same sort of ideas and accoutrements as a mystery cult. And in this case, we're sort of at the one of the most famous Roman mystery cults, Mithraism, has no record before the first century CE. So while its mythology reaches back, and there's this sort of attempt made to make it seem like an older religion, it's quite new in comparison to all of the other cults that we've been looking at so far. Um, it becomes extremely widespread. And part of this is because of its association with the Roman military. So people who are part of the Roman military were often initiates to the cult of Mithras. And as we see, this is a non-exhaustive map of Mithraea archaeological sites all across Europe and North Africa. We can see just how widespread this cult becomes. And how popularized it is. And part of this is due to the traveling population of the Roman military. And to their sort of tight-knit cohorts. So Mithraism is quite different in some respects than the other mystery cults that we have seen, in that there are often multiple Mithraea in a single city because the groups associated with a single temple or shrine were quite small. They were kept small both due to the space and due to the sort of cultural acts and activities that went on as part of cult practice. So let's take a look. This is one painting from Mithraeum in Italy, in Marino, Italy, from about 200 CE. And I briefly just kind of want to take you through this scene, which we're going to see replicated multiple times in multiple media throughout the rest of this presentation. But this is a fairly clear example iconographically of what we see going on. Now, every single Mithraea had an image of this scene in it, either painted or a statue or on an altar. But this image of the tauroctony, it's called the bull, the slaying of the bull, is central to Mithraic cult practice and to their beliefs. So here we see Mithras himself. He may look somewhat familiar to you at this point. He has a Phrygian cap on. He is wearing Persian garb with these trousers and brightly patterned clothing that we often see Greco-Roman people using to represent the otherness of the Persian. So here we have Mithras, who looks like a Persian, and he is pulling back a bull by its nostrils, stabbing it in the neck, and pinning it to the ground with one knee, with one foot on one of the legs. Above Mithras, we see on the upper left Sol Invictus, the sun god, the unconquered sun, who is recognizable either by his rayed sort of crown of sun rays or by, in later art, a halo. Showing his divinity, and here he is looking at Mithras, and then the moon on the right, Selene, the goddess of the moon. And then we have these two companions, which look like little miniature Mithrai, and that is Cautes with the torch pointed up and Cautopates with the torch pointed down, and these are the sort of companion deities of Mithras. And then interestingly, we see this dog who is biting the bull, a snake who is coming up to bite the bull, and this part's not clear here, but if you look carefully, there is also a scorpion down here reaching up to sting the testicles of the bull with his pincers, claws, scorpion hands. And so we have three different animals all coming up to kind of take out the fertility, the male fertility, the lifeblood of the bull. And then we have Mithras slaying the bull. And so in the cosmology of Mithras, which of course as a mystery cult is not entirely clear to us as outsiders, involves the act of Mithras, who is this child born of a cave. Here he is inside of a cave, we can see. Slays the bull as a sort of final sacrifice, right? So by sacrificing this bull, he is ending the need to appease the gods through animal sacrifice. That's one idea. And it's sort of that kind of reaches towards Christianity, right? This idea that blood sacrifice is not actually necessary anymore because the major sacrifice has already been performed by the central sort of deity that we are connecting with here. So like Christ's sacrifice on the cross, here we have Mithrais's killing of the bull. So this killing of the bull is really important to Mithraic cult. And we see it again and again. Here's a marble version. Here we have our scorpion stinging the bull, our snake coming up to bite the bull, our dog tearing the bull apart, Mithras pinning the bull down, pulling his head back, cutting him with his knife. So it's a little interesting to think about the fact that this cult shows up in the 1st century CE and then spreads so widely and is sort of drawing on this almost orientalizing image, orientalizing in the contemporary sense, right? Where they've taken a god, made him look really Persian and exotic, their version of exoticism at this time, and then kind of wholesale out of mysterious cloth created this really popular new deity that calls upon the exoticism of the East. So when you would go to a Mithraic shrine, all of them were in the form of caves to evoke the cave in which Mithras was born, and also the cave in which the bull was slain. So this is one example from Ostia where we can see that it is an artificial cave, right? We have brickwork here, but it is done in such a way to look organic. It's a little bit lopsided, a little bit not perfect in the way that you would see an arch in most Roman structures. So we have this very cave-like atmosphere. And so we have this very confined space in which the initiates would be performing their rituals and gathering together. So this is what keeps the group small. Mithras is for men only. So we've seen that the Dionysiac cults often are for women only. The cult of Cybele is for everybody, but the priesthood is solely male. And then we have Mithras, which is a male-only initiates type of society. So this video that I have put in here, I'm not going to play it for you, but if you click on it, it's really fun. It is a guy walking in here so that you can kind of get a sense of the way that the light changes. It becomes more dark. We have these skylights above that cast light down onto the central statue of Mithras slaying the bull. So it's a really interesting kind of evocative atmosphere to go into. Ostia and other similar towns with lots of tradespeople, lots of ex-soldiers moving through them, has a lot of Mithraea. So here's another example. And this one is a little bit smaller. The roof is gone, so it doesn't have that kind of evocative darkness to it anymore. But as you walk in, we have the benches lining the way up towards the central sort of focal point of the building where we would have seen this image of the Tauroctony. And as we walk up towards the central image of the Tauroctony from the doorway here, we're seeing these little tiny signs, and each one of these 7 signs represents one of the 7 stages of initiation. So don't want to go through them all, but you move up the ranks from Corax, Raven, to Pater, Father, through these various ranks, going through initiation rituals along the way. We don't have such a clear picture of what those looked like. But this seems to have been maybe conceptually similar to sort of Masonic lodges, right? Where you have a localized community group doing the same kinds of rituals and sharing in this broader, replicable secret society activities. And in this case, this is a space where we see male bonding occurring in the Roman world and sort of male community gathering spaces as they celebrate these mysteries of Mithras. So to get a closer look, here we have all sorts of symbolism packed into these 7 steps along the way. So we have signs of other deities and goddesses and gods who might be associated. We have musical instruments. So we have a raven here, which we often see in images of Mithras, a caduceus, so that staff of Hermes, the sistrum, which is usually associated with the goddess Isis, who is today our to-do slide and involved in a mystery cult we're not talking about, but is one of the most popularized and most important in the Roman world. And we have, of course, our Phrygian cap here and our curved Persian sword. So all sorts of accoutrements that have symbolic meaning to the men in this society who can interpret them. built into this space so that we have the architecture representing these stages of initiation as well as evoking the larger mythological cosmology of the god Mithras himself. This is just another example from Campania down in near the Bay of Naples. And I like this example just because in this photo here, you see the antechamber. So as you walk into the Mithraeum, you actually have to go through a little bit of a tunnel and then take a left turn after you start to see some of the iconography pertaining to Mithras. And then you walk in to this narrow tunnel-like space with the benches where you might sit together and the Tauroctony painted on the wall at the end. So we have small social gatherings. There is still some interest here in the mysteries of life and death, in what happens beyond the grave. You might think about what this might mean to the population of soldiers, people on the front lines fighting for the Romans, who are oftentimes involved in this cult. And we have across all media, various representations. Here's another one in marble. I like this one because it's a little bit more rough hewn, a little bit more popular art style. And then we have a bronze plaque here. And so with the story of Mithras, we have this promise of cycles of life and death again, interest in male fertility in this case particularly, and not in the castration of a male, as in the case of Attis, but in the sort of castration of a bull on behalf of the human race in order to fulfill this sort of cycle and maintain the cycles of life, death, and rebirth that are of such interest to people who are initiates in mystery cults at this time. So Mithraism is another really interesting one, instantly recognizable. If you go to a classical museum, chances are you will see some sort of image of Mithras, and now you will be able to hopefully recognize him, but maybe not tell him apart from Attis or the other Phrygians, who are all represented somewhat similarly, and uncoincidentally, given that they are sort of stereotypes of the foreigner at this time. So what I want you to do is just in 1 to 2 sentences each respond to the following questions. And first, what do you make of the weird visual similarities between depictions of Attis and depictions of Mithras? How similar are they? Go back into the previous PowerPoint, take a look at Attis, think about it. Just real quick, if you have any thoughts on that. And then the second question is, how do you sort of interpret the social function of Mithraic cult practice versus what we see in our Room of the Mysteries or previous mystery cults that we've talked about. So try and work through some of these demographic differences and think about what they might mean. And also, how does that relate then to the sort of representation of these spaces and places where you would do cult practice? I think a Mithraeum is really interesting to think about in conjunction with our Room of the Mysteries, because both of them are these sort of evocative atmospheric places where you start to maybe move between mythological and the human realm a little bit through the artistic sphere. So that's that. I'll be back in the next lecture. I hope you are all having a wonderful day. Thank you.